Hey everyone, in today's Balatro video, I have something a little bit different, and today we are going to be ranking all 150 of the Jokers that are currently in the game. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. If you do, please like, subscribe, it really helps me out a ton, and I would really appreciate it. So yeah, let's get right into the video. Alright, so our first Joker is going to be the 8 ball. The 8 ball has a 1 in 4 chance to create a tarot card whenever an 8 is scored. This Joker, I think it's good. I like using it a lot. The only problem with it is that you have to use an 8, and the 8 does not really have a synergy with anything. It doesn't have synergy with Sock and Buskin or Hack, so you can't really re-trigger it all that much, and it doesn't have a lot of scoring synergy as well. I think the only thing might be the Fibonacci, so it is kind of hard to, make good use of it. I like it. I think it's fine. I don't think it's great. And I think it's hard to get it into a run, which is why I'm going to put 8 ball at C. Next up, we have the Abstract Joker, which gives +3 molt for every Joker that you have. So if you have 6 Jokers, it'll give +18 molt, or 5 Jokers will give +15 molt. I think this Joker is very good early game, incredibly good. A very reliable source of molt for the early game. And you can't really take a molt Joker like that in the late game where it's only going to peak out at maybe 21 molt. If you have 7 Jokers, that's getting a little bit lucky. But I think that the Abstract Joker is very good early game, so I am going to put the Abstract Joker into B. Next up, we have the Acrobat. The Acrobat gives you ×3 molt on the final hand of the round. Now, this can be good, especially on like the Needle, where you only get one hand, so it activates the first time. But unfortunately, this does kind of hurt your economy because you are waiting for that last hand to get that ×3 molt, so it is harder to kind of use it and keep your economy going. I think it's a great Joker. ×3 molt is always amazing, no matter how you get it. But I think that for this kind of hit on your economy, it's going to have to go into the B rank. Next up, we have the Ancient Joker. The Ancient Joker will give ×1.5 per each card of a certain suit scored. So it does change every round, and it doesn't matter what you have in your deck. It'll always pick one of the 4 suits. This Joker is incredibly good. I've had so many runs with it where it easily takes me into the early antes of Endless, and I think it's one of my favorite Jokers, especially the early game. That way you can kind of fix your deck and kind of have an even amount of all the suits is the goal. So I think that this Joker is incredibly good, especially with re-triggers. Like the Dusk is very good, even though you do have to wait until your last hand. But I still think it is one of the best Jokers in the game. So I'm going to go put this one in the S tier. Next up, we have the Arrowhead. This gives +50 molt for each spade card scored. This can be very good on decks like the Plasma deck and probably take you all the way. But chips aren't exactly what we're looking for whenever we're trying to go into Endless. So I think for the Arrowhead, I think it is a very good chip Joker. I think it works really well in the early game if you're trying to play spades. I think it works very well, but unfortunately it's just not really what we're looking for in most of our runs. So for that reason, I'm going to have to go ahead and put it into the B rank. Next up, we have the Astronomer, which makes all planet cards in the shop free and celestial packs in the shop free. The Astronomer is very good, especially in the early game to help level up those hands and get yourself going. It does kind of slow down in the late game once you get your economy going. You don't really need it anymore. It's always helpful, always. It doesn't hurt to have free planets, but it does kind of take up a Joker slot at the end of the game, and you're probably not going to take it in to Endless. But very good early game. I think it's a very useful Joker, especially before you have your economy going to help you level up those hands. But unfortunately, it is expensive. It costs $8 in the shop. So for that reason, I'm going to put it into the B rank. Next up, we have the Banner. The Banner gives +30 chips for each discard remaining. The Banner can be good in some scenarios, but I think in most scenarios, it's probably not the best. You'll want to be able to use those discards to find the hand that you want, and not being able to use those discards does kind of hinder you a little bit. So I think for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and put Banner in C tier. Next up, we have the Baron. This Joker gives ×1.5 molt for each king held in hand. This Joker can be incredibly good, and I have my best scoring run ever with this Joker. But unfortunately, it has to be in a very, very specific scenario with the Red Seal Steel Kings along with a Mime and the high card setup. For that reason, I'm going to have to put this one in the A rank. It isn't as viable with other setups, which makes it kind of hard to build your deck that way. but I think it's also almost easy to find your deck, build your deck that way if you find the Baron early enough, and I think that it is incredibly good. So I'm going to put Baron in A tier. Next up, we have the baseball card. The baseball card gives times 1.5 mul for each uncommon joker you have in your joker slots. So I think the baseball card can be good. I think it does kind of limit what you can do a little bit because you're really looking for those uncommon jokers. So it is kind of difficult to make sure that we have uncommon jokers that we're playing with, but it can be incredibly good if you have a lot of them, and for that reason I'm going to put it in the A rank. Next up, we have the blackboard. The blackboard gives times 3 mult if all remaining cards held in hand are either spades or clubs, so any black suit. I think this can be very good, but I think early game especially, it is very hard to get your hand down to A, what you want, and B, having the rest of your cards be spades or clubs. So for that reason, I think it's a great joker. I love it. Again, the times 3 mult is very good, but I think that, it could definitely use some work, and it's not as good as it could be, but it is still times 3 mult joker, so I'm going to put this one into the B tier. Next up, we have Bloodstone. Bloodstone has a 1 in 2 chance to give times 1.5 mult for each heart card scored. This players extremely well with Oops All Sixes, which gives you a 2 in 2 chance or 100% chance to give you times 1.5 mult. However, on its own, it is a little bit unreliable, and I mean, it's still a good joker. It can be very good. Hearts are generally, I think, I enjoy playing hearts for some reason. I'm not sure why, but I think that the Bloodstone is the best out of those 4 like uncommon suit jokers. And I think for that reason, even though it can be unreliable sometimes, I think I'm going to have to put it in the A tier. Next up, we have the blue joker. The blue joker gives +2 chips for each card remaining in your deck. So if you have 34 cards in your deck, it'll give you 68 chips or something like that. So this joker can be very good. I think it's better than the banner. I think it's a very reliable chip joker until you get your deck down. Again, you want to fix your deck, get your deck down a little bit. So I think that this joker can be good, but I don't think that it really has a lot of endgame potential like most chip jokers. But I think it is a very reliable chip joker in the very beginning, so I'm going to go ahead and put this one in the B tier. Next up, we have the blueprint. The blueprint, very simple. It copies the ability of the joker to the right. It will not copy any addition, so if it's polychrome, it won't copy that, but that really doesn't matter with the blueprint. The blueprint is probably the strongest joker in the game, because it makes your best joker, and it makes 2 of them, and you can kind of use it multiple times around. If you have a DNA, you can do that. If you have 8 ball, you can trigger multiple times, have that trigger multiple times. It's just your best joker twice. It is incompatible with some things, especially like economy jokers and Oops All Sixes, but I still think it's probably the best joker in the game, and you would be dumb not to do anything you can to pick up this joker. So for that reason, I'm going to put this one in S tier. Next up, we have the bootstraps. The bootstraps gives you +2 mult for every $5 you have, and it can pair well, especially with the bowl, but unfortunately, I'm not too big of a fan of this joker because you don't really get to spend all your money that much, and you want to be able to spend your money, go through those shops and look for the jokers. It can be very good, an incredible flat mult joker, but unfortunately, I'm going to have to give this one a B. Next up, we have the Brainstorm. The Brainstorm copies the ability of the joker all the way to the left, so that your leftmost joker slot is what the Brainstorm is going to copy. Extremely similar to the blueprint, just a little bit worse in that you can't really get your order right all the time, but still an incredibly good joker. It is almost identical to a blueprint, and for that reason, it is also going in the S tier. Next up, we have the Bull, which gives you +2 chips for every dollar that you have. Like I said with the bootstraps, it does pair very well with that. However, it does kind of hinder your economy a little bit, but this is probably one of the best chip jokers in the game, and especially one of the most reliable, where you're able to kind of build your economy up and also, get a bunch of chips for it. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and put the Bull in A tier. Next up, we have the Burglar. The Burglar gives you +3 hands, and you lose all your discards. This joker can be very good, especially in the early game, and help build your economy up a little bit quicker because you get an extra $1 for each of those hands. However, it doesn't work well with jokers like the Burnt Joker or the Trading Card, which require you to use a discard. But I think it is a very good joker early game, especially, and really can help build your economy and kick your run off to a good start. So I'm going to have to put this one in the A tier. Next up, we have the Burnt Joker. The Burnt Joker will upgrade the hand that you discard with the first discard of the round. I think this Joker is probably one of the better ones in the game. I think, especially if you get it early, leveling up those hands and getting those chips and that base molt can be incredibly powerful, especially with, high card where you can discard it every single round, or even pair, especially. Sometimes people do that. I think it's probably one of the better Jokers in the game and really allows you to help level up those hands quickly and efficiently. For that reason, I'm going to put the Burnt Joker in S tier. Next up, we have the Business card, which gives a 1 in 2 chance to give you $2 for every face card scored. I think this is one of the best economy Jokers in the game. Face cards generally have a lot of synergy, especially with like Asaka and Buskin, or, obviously Tribulate is very good. Any other Photograph, Hanging Chad, those all go well together, and a lot of them give you retriggers, and so it's especially good to play towards face cards. So I think that, having retriggers on the face cards is incredibly useful for the Business card. For that reason, I'm going to put the Business card in the A tier. Next up, we have Canio. Canio is the first of our 5 legendary Jokers, and Canio will increase his times molt by 1 every time a face card is destroyed. So for example, if it's at ×1 and you use a Hangman on 2 face cards, it'll go up to ×3 molt. This Joker is incredibly good. Obviously, one of the best Jokers in the game. It's a legendary. There's no doubt where it's going. But I think that there are better legendary Jokers, and it just depends on kind of what you're looking for in your run. If you're trying to play towards face cards, Canio is not that great to pull in the later game. But I think that is, especially if you can get it early, an extremely reliable way to get you all the way through and into Endless, at least the early part of it. So for that reason, it's going to go in the S tier. Next up, we have the Campfire. The Campfire gives you ×0.25 molt for every card sold and resets after the boss bind. I think that, this can be good, especially if your economy's going and you have like liquidation and cards are very cheap to buy and sell. I think this can be very good. However, I don't think it's a reliable way to get you into the late antes, and especially if you don't want to see that early game. You're not really looking to buy and sell things. You're looking to buy things to hold on to them and keep them and use them. So I'm going to have to put this one in the B tier. Our next Joker is going to be the Card Sharp. Card Sharp gives you ×3 molt if the hand was already previously played in the round. I think this is very good, especially early game, for that extra ×3 molt, as long as you can play a reliable hand. I think it's very good, and I'm going to go ahead and put this one in the B tier. Next up, we have the Cartomancer. The Cartomancer gives you a tarot card every time the blind is selected. Personally, I think that the Cartomancer is the best source of tarot cards in the game. I don't think there's any way you can get better than that. And for that reason, I think it's incredibly reliable, especially with a Blueprint or Brainstorm. Helps you get your deck down extremely well, extremely fast, maybe get your money up, enhance your cards. It does everything. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and put it in the A tier. Next up, we have the Castle. The Castle will give you +3 chips for each card discarded of a specific suit. The suit does change every round, maybe. It can be the same suit, and it does go based on like how many cards are in your deck. So if you have all hearts, it's going to be hearts every time, and that's a very useful part. However, it is kind of hard to level up in the early game, especially, and once you have kind of all your deck to one suit, it's not that useful. It's not a great chip Joker, because a lot of the times you're kind of having to get rid of cards that you don't want to get rid of in order to level up. For that reason, I'm going to put it in the C tier. Next up, we have the Cavendish. The Cavendish gives you ×3 molt with a 1 in 1,000 chance of breaking. Obviously, a 1 in 1,000 chance almost never happens. For that reason, it's ×3 molt with almost no repercussions. You're just getting ×3 molt for free. For that reason, I'm going to put this one in the A tier. Next up, we have the Ceremonial Dagger. The Ceremonial Dagger will take the sell value of the Joker to the right, double it, and add it to the molt on the Ceremonial Dagger, and then it will destroy the Joker to the right. So, for example, and that's on each blind selected. So if you go into the blind and there is, an egg on the right and it's worth $3, it will destroy the egg and give you $6 or 6 molt on the Ceremonial Dagger. I don't really love the Ceremonial Dagger. It's kind of hard to get going, especially, early game. You want to keep those Jokers. You're not really looking to get rid of them. I think it can be fun to use sometimes. It's definitely a fun joker, but I think that it's not very useful. And again, you're not getting the sell value out of those jokers, so it is a little bit of a loss of investment. And for that reason, I'm gonna have to put this one in the C tier. Next up, we have the certificate. The certificate adds one card with one seal to your hand every round. It can be incredibly good, especially with the hologram leveling it up. But I think in most scenarios, you're trying to thin your deck down, not, make it large. So I think for that reason, I'm gonna have to put it in the C rank. Next up, we have Chaos the Clown. Chaos the Clown gives you one free reroll per shop. I think Chaos the Clown is actually pretty good, especially early game, to help you look for those jokers that you really need and get your run going. But I think late game, once you have your economy going, maybe some vouchers, it's not as good. And for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and put it in the C tier. Next up, we have Chico, the second of our 5 legendary jokers. Chico disables the boss blind every time, so for that reason, I think it's very good, especially in the higher stakes, whenever, boss blinds are a little less forgiving than the early stakes, which, boss blinds, you can kind of get past them a little bit easier. But I think Chico is very good. However, it is a legendary joker, and in some scenarios, probably the worst legendary joker. You're probably not very happy if you pull Chico out of a soul card. And for that reason, I'm going to put him in the A rank. Next up, we have the Clever Joker, which gives you plus 80 chips if played hand is a 2-pair. I think that, the Clever Joker is, very useful. I think it's, good early game, especially if you're playing 2-pair. But again, you're kind of playing the late game. These early chip jokers are not useful. And I don't think, playing 2-pair a lot isn't that great, I'd say, in some scenarios. But I don't know. It's probably one of my least favorite jokers. All the early chip jokers, I'm not really a fan of. For that reason, it's going to go in the D tier. Next up, we have the Cloud9. The Cloud9 gives you $1 per 9 in your full deck at the end of the round. So I think that, obviously most decks, except for the erratic deck, you'll start with 9 or 4 9s, and you'll get $4 at the end of each round. The problem with this joker is that 9s really aren't that synergetic with anything else, so you're not really looking to play towards 9s in your deck most of the time, unless you have this very early, and then you can kind of play towards 9s, make it incredibly large. But I think that, it's not that great of an economy joker. I think it's good, can be very good, but unfortunately 9s aren't that good, so I'm going to go ahead and put this one in the C tier. Next up, we have the Constellation. The Constellation adds times 0.1 molt for every planet card used. This does not include the black hole, because that is a spectral card, but Constellation is very good. Most times you want to use the planet cards anyway to level up your hands, and the times molt can really get up there, especially if you get this one early. It pairs very well with the Astronomer, which I talked about earlier, but I do think that, this is one of the best times molt jokers in the game, one of the best scalable ones, especially. For that reason, I'm going to put the Constellation in the A tier. Next up, we have the Crafty Joker. The Crafty Joker gives you plus 80 chips if you play a flush. Again, like the Clever Joker, this one may be useful in the early game, and then is not that useful later on. For that reason, I'm just going to have to put this one on the D tier as well. Next up, we have the Crazy Joker, which gives you plus 12 molt if your plan played is a straight. I think this Joker can be good. Early game molt is very good, except straights are kind of hard to draw a lot of the times consistently. So, playing that straight, playing that Crazy Joker, it can be a little bit difficult sometimes, especially in the early game before you get your deck fixed up. So for that reason, this Joker is also going in the D rank. Next up, we have the Credit Card, which allows you to go up to negative $20 in debt and keep spending up to negative $20. I do not like the Credit Card at all. It's just like a credit card in real life. Not good. So we're going to go and put this one in the D tier. There's not really any use for it, especially in the late game. In the early game, it will probably dig you into a hole that you cannot get yourself out of and cost you the game. For that reason, it's going in D tier. Next up, we have the Delayed Gratification, another economy joker. This one will give you plus $2 for every discard you have at the end of the round, if no discards are used. I'm not a huge fan of this joker at all. I think that, it does have some synergy with like the banner, but unfortunately, I'm just not a fan of this joker. I like using my discards. I like being able to draw the hands that I need to play, and for that reason, again, not a fan of this joker. I'm going to put this one in the C tier. Next up, we have the Devious Joker. It gives you plus 100 chips if your hand played is a straight. Unfortunately, like the Crafty Joker and the Crazy Joker, this, again, it's not really good early game. Can be good early game. I wouldn't say really good early game, but it's especially a chip Joker, not that great. So unfortunately, we're going to put this one in the D tier. Next up, we have the Diet Cola, which, if sold, gives you a double tag, which I think double tags can be good, except for the fact that, you know, most of the time you can't even take this up because your Joker roster's full, and if you have that double tag, you're probably not going to use it. You know, double tags aren't really meant to be used, I guess, and like most of the time, better players won't skip for tags. You want to see the shop, it's important to be able to see the shop. So for that reason, I think that, you know, Diet Cola, it can be good in some scenarios. If you have an empty Joker slot, might as well pick it up and sell it just in case, but I'm going to have to put this one in the C tier. Next up, we have the DNA. The DNA, if your first hand played is one card, it will create a copy of that card and put it in your hand. I think this Joker can be very well, especially when played with like Blueprint and Hologram, can work very well with those. I think that it's very good for fixing your deck and making your deck a bunch of, you know, the cards that you want to have. So I do think this has some applications. It's not always good in scenarios, so unfortunately we're going to have to put this one in the A tier. Next up, we have the Driver's License, which gives you ×3 molt if you have at least 16 enhanced cards in your deck. Early game, it is kind of useless because you're probably not having 16 enhanced cards in your deck that early. You're kind of looking for, you know, the ×3 molt. It is very good, and especially in the late game, if you find it and you've enhanced your deck a little bit, it can be very good. Early game, not that good. Because of the lack of, you know, helpfulness early game, it is very good late game, but again, because of that lack of early game use, it's going to go in the B tier. Next up, we have the Draw Joker. The Draw Joker gives you plus 10 molt if your hand played is a flush. Personally, I'm a big fan of flushes, and I like the extra 10 molt early game. If you can find this Joker in the first, like, anti-shop, I think it can be useful, get you through a couple hands, or a couple antis, and I think that, you know, it's good early game, very good early game, I'd say. Not that great in the late game. So for that reason, I'm going to put this one in the C tier. Next up, we have the Drunkard, which gives you +1 discard each round. I think, again, I love discards. I think that they're one of the most important things in the game. I think that it's very good, especially, you know, with things like delayed gratification or banner. They do pair very well with those, or, you know, even a mail-in rebate. Again, pairs very well with those. Unfortunately, I do think taking up a whole Joker slot for one discard, it can be good early game, not that great in the late game, so I'm going to have to put this one in the B tier. Next up, we have the Dusk, which will re-trigger all cards played if it is your last hand. I think the Dusk can pair very well with things like the Ancient Joker, where it will re-trigger all of your cards, but unfortunately, it does kind of cost you in your economy where you have to play towards that last hand. I think it can be good, but I think there are better options, especially you know, depending on what hand you're playing and what Jokers you're playing. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to put this one in the B tier. Next up, we have the Egg. The Egg gives you an increase in $3 of its sell value. Next up, we have the Egg. The Egg gives you an increase of $3 in its sell value every round you've won. I think this Egg, very funny idea. I love it. There's even a challenge with almost all eggs. I think it's a great challenge, but unfortunately we're not really, like, doesn't have a lot of use. It will make your temperance better, it will make a swashbuckler better, but unfortunately it's not really that useful in most scenarios. It's good if you have an empty Joker slot. You can let that build up a little bit and then sell it for more money later, but unfortunately kind of a very specific scenario, so I'm going to put the Egg in C. Next up, we have the Erosion. The Erosion gives you +4 molt for each card under 52 in your deck, except for on the abandoned deck, where it's each card under 40. It's just whatever amount of cards you start with. I think this Joker is very good. It's a very good molt Joker, base molt Joker. But I think that, you know, late in the game, if your deck is fixed down enough to where this is pretty good, you probably have a good enough hand already and a good enough setup. I think it's good. I think it's probably one of the best flat molt Jokers in the game, but I think it could be better. but still, again, I think it's one of the best flat mold jokers in the game, so I'm going to go ahead and put this one in the A tier. Next up, we have the Even Steven. Any even card, so that's going to be 2, 4, 6, 8, or 10, when triggered will give you +4 molds. So I think this card's very good, especially early game. You play towards those like pairs or 3 of a kinds, full houses with those even numbers. I think it can be good, but I think later in the game it's not that great. So I think I'm gonna have to put this one in the C tier. Next up, we have the Faceless Joker, which if you discard 3 face cards at once, it will give you $5. I think this is a great economy joker early. But unfortunately, it does not have a lot of synergy. A lot of times, those face cards are pretty good. You want to be playing those face cards. But I still think it's a very good economy joker early. Can help get your money up like in 2 rounds to your $25 for that interest cap. So for that reason, I'm going to put this one in the A tier. Next up, we have the Fibonacci. The Fibonacci gives +8 mult to the ace, 2, 3, 5, or 8. All the Fibonacci numbers. I do think that this joker can be good, especially early game, whenever you really need that molt. But I think late game, it doesn't really have a lot of synergy with most of those cards. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to put this one in the C tier. Next up, we have the Four Fingers. The Four Fingers gives you the chance to play a flush or straight with only 4 of those cards. Four Fingers is fine. It's not the best, especially whenever you get your deck fixed enough. You're not really looking to play only 4 cards. You want to play all 5 cards so that you can, maximize on the chips or the enhanced card value that you have in your cards. So for that reason, I'm going to put it in the C tier. Next up, we have the Flash card. The Flash card gains +2 molt every time you reroll in the shop. So it can be good, especially in the later game, kind of easier to build up, especially with help from a couple of vouchers. But unfortunately, I think in the early game, it's too expensive to keep rerolling and increasing the molt on that. So for that reason, I'm going to have to put this one in the C tier. Next up, we have the Flower Pot, which gives you ×3 molt if there's a scored hand with at least 1 of each type of suit. So 1 spade, 1 club, 1 heart, 1 diamond. Unfortunately, this joker is just not good. There's not a lot of times where you're trying to play 1 of each suit, and it's not really that effective. So I'm going to go ahead and put this one in the D tier. Next up, we have the Fortune Teller, which gives you +1 molt for each tarot card used throughout the run. I think Fortune Teller is very good. Maybe not that great early, but once you get your run going a little bit and get your economy going, open up those Arcana packs, get those tarot cards, I think it's very good. You're wanting to use tarot cards anyway, so increasing the base molt on the Fortune Teller can be pretty quick scaled once you start getting into the run. So I think for that reason, I'm going to put this one in the B tier. Next up, we have the Gift Card. The Gift Card increases all Joker and consumable sell values by $1 at the end of each round. This is actually one of my favorite jokers in the game. I love it. I think it's very good, especially early, to increase your temperance value and your sell value on jokers that you're kind of just holding on to, and even buying tarot cards that could be good just to sell later. But I think that it's definitely one of my favorite jokers in the game for some reason. I actually do like the Gift Card a lot, and for that reason, I'm going to put it in the B tier. Next up, we have the Glass Joker. The Glass Joker gives you ×0.75 molt every time a glass card breaks. So if your glass card breaks 1 round, it's 1.75. If it breaks the next round, it's 2.5. This can scale very quickly, except we're usually not running into that many glass cards, so it can be hard to scale. I think it's a great joker. I think the idea is great, but we also don't really want our glass cards to break most of the time. And for that reason, I'm going to put it in the B tier. Next up, we have the Gluttonous Joker, which gives you +3 molt every time a club card is scored. I think this can be very good early game. It's very easy to look for those suits that you like, but unfortunately, obviously in the late game, you're not really looking towards those suits. So I'm going to go ahead and put this one in the C tier. Next up, we have the Golden Joker. The Golden Joker will give you $4 at the end of each round, and I think it's very good, especially early. Get your economy going and help boost it up. Even late game, an extra $4 goes a long way. So I think that, it's an economy joker. I love all the economy jokers because I think the economy is the most important thing in the game. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and put this one in the B tier. Next up, we have the Golden Ticket. The Golden Ticket gives you $4 whenever you play a gold card. I think, the idea behind this joker, it's very good. You're kind of looking to get your economy up. The thing is, though, with a gold card, you're already getting $3 for just leaving it in your hand at the end of the round. So I think that, It can be good, it can be useful, but I think that most of the time it's probably not worth picking up, so I'm going to put this one in the D tier. Next up we have the Greedy Joker, which gives +3 molt for each diamond card scored. Again, just like the Gluttonous Joker, can be very good early, not that great late. This one's also going to go in the C tier. Next up I have the Green Joker. The Green Joker gives you +1 molt for each hand played and -1 molt for each discard used. I think that, the Green Joker, I'm not that big of a fan of it. I think that using your discards is very helpful. It can be good in like a spammy high card run where you have like the banner, and it really works well with that. But I think that in most scenarios, you're probably not looking to play the Green Joker. So I'm going to have to go and put this one in the C tier. Next up, we have the Gross Michael. This one gives you +15 molt and has a 1 in 6 chance of breaking at the end of each round. I think that, the Gross Michael, it's very good early game, very good. And I think that, it is one of the best early game molt jokers because there's almost no repercussions. There is a chance that it breaks every round, and if it does break, that does kind of screw you over a little bit. But in most scenarios, it's pretty good. So I'm going to go and put this one in the B tier. Our next joker is going to be the Hack. I think that the Hack is one of the better jokers in the game. It re-triggers all 2s, 3s, 4s, or 5s, and it can work very well in late game with like an idol or something like that. So for that reason, I think the Hack will go in the A tier. I love the re-triggers on the cards. It is such an important thing into the late game, especially into Endless. So yeah, we're going to put the Hack in the A tier. Next up is the Half Joker. The Half Joker will give you +20 molt if your played hand only contains 3 cards or less. I think that the Half Joker is very good early game. It does kind of limit what kind of hands you can play, but 20 molt at the beginning of the round, beginning of the game, very good. So I think that paired with like a smaller chip joker works very well, so I'm going to put it in the B tier. Next up, we have the Hallucination. The Hallucination gives you a 1 in 2 chance to create a tarot card whenever you open up a booster pack. I think that the Hallucination is also, like the Cardomancer, one of the best tarot card generations in the game. I think that, that with opening packs, you're probably wanting to open packs anyway, so I think it's just a boost to be able to kind of have a chance to get a tarot card out of them, and for that reason, I'm going to put it in the A tier. Next up, we have the Hanging Chad. The Hanging Chad takes your first scored card and replays it twice. This can be very good, especially with lucky cards or gold seals, to where you're looking for lucky triggers, or even glass cards where you're looking for more re-triggers. Another thing it pairs well with, probably the Ancient Joker, a Triboulet, a Photograph especially, 2 common jokers, that's a very popular combo, even the Bloodstone. So again, it's easily able to be used. I think it's one of the best jokers in the game. For that reason, I'm going to have to put it in the A tier. Next up, we have the Hiker. The Hiker will increase the amount of chips on your card by 5 whenever it is scored. I think it's very good early game, especially on Plasma deck. Almost any other deck, I probably wouldn't really touch this card. It can be fine early game, but especially late game, I would not pick this up. I think it's fine. I think it has some uses, but I don't think I would probably ever use this joker. For that reason, I'm going to put it in the D tier. Next up, we have Hit the Road, which adds 0.5 molt. 0.5x molt. Next up, we have Hit the Road, which gives you plus 0.5x molt for every jack discarded in that round. I think Hit the Road can be fun. I think it can be useful in some scenarios, but most of the time, you're probably, if you have a lot of jacks, looking to play them, or else you probably don't have that many jacks in your hand. So I think that having Hit the Road, not that useful. You're trying to looking to either play your jacks or get rid of all your jacks. So for that reason, I'm going to put it in the C tier. Next up, we have the Hologram. I think that the Hologram is one of the best jokers in the game. It gives you plus 0.25x molt for every time you add a playing card to your deck. So opening a standard pack, or getting the Magic Trick voucher, certificate, the DNA, those all play very well with the Hologram. I think it's very easy to scale into incredibly large hands, and for that reason, I'm going to put this one in the S tier. Next up, we have the Ice Cream. The Ice Cream gives you plus 100 chips at the start, and every hand played, it will decrease it by 5, so the Ice Cream kind of melts. I think this is very good early game, especially with a kind of early base molt joker. So I think that, because the early game viability doesn't really have any viability in the late game, for the early game especially, I'm going to put this one in the B tier. Next up, we have the Invisible Joker. The Invisible Joker, after you hold it for 2 rounds, if you sell it, will copy one of your other jokers. I think that this is almost similar to a Blueprint or Brainstorm, and that is definitely one of the best jokers in the game. being able to make a copy of your best Joker is incredible. So again, this one's going to go in the S tier. It is sometimes risky to kind of hold on to your other Jokers and hope that you get what you want. A lot of the times you'll try and sell out of everything else and get those, but I do think it's one of the best Jokers in the game, so it's going in S tier. Next up, we have the Joker, also known by most Balatro fans as Jimbo. Jimbo gives +4 molt, and he is the face of the game. You know, just +4 molt by itself isn't that great, but since he's the face of the game, you know, I'm going to rank up his ranking a little bit, and we're going to give him a B. After Jimbo, we have the Joker Stencil. Now, the Joker Stencil gives times molt for all empty slots of your Joker inventory. So the Stencil will give, you know, ×5 molt if you just have the Joker Stencil by itself, ×4 if you have one other Joker, ×3 if you have 2 other Jokers. Joker Stencil's fine, however, it limits your ability to add more Jokers to your roster unless it's more Joker Stencils. So for that reason, I think it's fine, but I think once you need more Jokers, it gets a little bit worse. So I'm going to give Joker Stencil a C. Next up, we have the Jolly Joker. The Jolly Joker gives +8 molt whenever you play a pair. Overall, I think this is great for the early game, but unfortunately, just like the rest of them, it's not that good after the early game. So I'm going to have to give this one a D. Next up, we have the Juggler. The Juggler gives you +1 hand size, and that's it. I feel like this one's pretty decent in the early game, pretty similar to the Drunkard. And skill level just allows you to draw your hands a little bit easier. So I'm going to go ahead and give this one a B. Next up, we have the Loyalty card. The Loyalty card gives you ×4 molt every 6 rounds. I'm not a huge fan of this one. The ×4 molt is quite a lot. However, getting it every 6 hands does not mean that you get it every single round in most cases. Sometimes on the blue deck, on an early stake, you can get it every single round. But I think that, you know, it's important to be able to have your molt every single round. So I think that, you know, this can be good, but I don't think that it's that good. So I'm going to give this one a C ranking. Next up, we have the Luchador. The Luchador, if a boss blind is active and you sell it, will disable the current boss blind. I think that, you know, just carrying this Joker isn't very effective, but if you find it in the shop whenever you really need it, for example, the plant, everybody knows the plant, disabling face cards, obviously Luchador can be very good, very beneficial in disabling that if you can find it in the shop. So carrying it, not that great. Overall, I think it is pretty good, and I'm going to give it a B ranking. Next up, we have the Lucky Cat. The Lucky Cat gains 0.25x molt every time a lucky card is scored. So even if it's 20 molt and $20 in the same thing, it's only one extra 0.25. I think this works great. This is one of my favorite Jokers, you know, especially with lucky cards being my favorite enhancement, as well as, like, you know, you get Hanging Chad, you get the Stocking Buskin, you get the Hack. Anything that can re-trigger those cards can be extremely helpful and really help get that Lucky Cat up to like 10, 15 molt, and it can get pretty crazy. So I'm going to put the Lucky Cat in the A. Next up, we have the Lusty Joker. Just like the Gluttonous Joker and the Greedy Joker, this one's going to go in C. It gives +3 molt for each hard card scored, and it has, you know, it's basically the same as the other two, so I'm going to put this one in C. Next up, we have the Mad Joker. This is +10 molt if you play a 2-pair. I think that the Mad Joker is, again, good early game, not very good after that, so I'm going to put it in the D ranking. Next up on our list, we have Madness. Madness is a bit of a funny one. It'll give you 0.5x extra molt for every small blind and big blind selected, so not boss blinds, but on those small blinds and big blinds, it will destroy one of your other Jokers. It can be good in higher stakes. I don't think it is very effective at all in like the white stake where you can't get Eternals, but in the later stakes, whenever you get Eternals, if you get some good Eternals, pair that with a Madness, it can do pretty well and get up to like 8x molt or 9x molt, depending on how far you take your run. But overall, I think this is not a good Joker to take in the early stakes, so I'm going to put this one in the C ranking. Next up, we have the Mail-in Rebate. Mail-in Rebate, if discarding a specific rank of card, will give you $5. So I think that it's almost one of the best economy Jokers in the game. Probably the best, if I'm being serious. I think that, you know, with enough deck fixing, you can get your card down, your whole deck down to one rank of card, and then it's just free $5 anytime you discard one of those cards. So again, I think this is probably the best economy Joker in the game in given scenarios, so I'm going to give this one an S rank. Next up is the Marble Joker. The Marble Joker will add a stone card to your deck whenever a blind is selected. I think that the Marble Joker can be good in some scenarios, like with the hologram, but I don't think it is that good. I think that it could be better. I don't love stone cards, they're fine, but they don't allow you to play the hands that might necessarily score you the best points. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and give Marble Joker a C ranking. Next up, we have the Matador. The Matador is one of the better early game economy jokers. It gives you $8 if you activate the boss blind's debuff. So for example, if heart cards are debuffed and you play a heart card that is scored, it will give you $8. However, I think that, only because you can only use it on boss blinds and it doesn't even work on every boss blind, I think that the economy doesn't really work that well. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in a C rank. Next up, we have the Merry Andy. The Merry Andy gives you +3 discards for each hand, but -1 hand size. So the Merry Andy allows you to discard more for your cards that you need, but it does take away a hand size, so it kind of evens out a little bit. I think it's nice with things like the delayed gratification of the banner. I think it can work well, or the York as well. York is a very, very good joker. We'll talk about it later. But I think that, it can be good. It can be not good. Just really depends on what you're playing for. So I'm going to go ahead and give this one a B ranking. Next up is the Midas Mask. The Midas Mask, if played card is a face card, will turn it into gold. Even if it has another enhancement on it already, it doesn't really care. It's going to turn into gold. So that it has an upside, has a downside. I think early game it's very well, or it's very good early game, but I think that late game it kind of loses its ability, and you probably don't want to hold it into late game. So I'm going to go ahead and give Midas Mask a B. Next up we have the Mime. The Mime, in my opinion, is one of the better jokers in the game, and it re-triggers all held in hand effects. So that includes gold cards, steel cards, blue seals. It includes like the raised fist for the Joker, or shoot the moon, or the Baron effect. All those things it will re-trigger. So I think that one of the most important Joker's setups in the game is the Baron and the Mime. They work incredibly well together, but I think that the Mime is not necessarily only good in that scenario. I think it's good because of the steel cards, and then the increased economy from gold cards, and the increased planets from blue seals. So I think that's one of the better Jokers in the game. I'm going to give Mime an S rank. Next up we have Misprint. Misprint is one of the weirder Jokers in the game. It will give you like a random multi-amount between, I believe, 0 and 25. So it depends on the scoring, but it's not super reliable. I do think it's a fun Joker to play with. I think it's funny, good concept, but I don't think it's that good and that reliable. And whenever we're pushing into later antes, we want something more reliable. So I'm going to go ahead and give Misprint a B. I think it's good enough in the early game to get you through, but will not take it in the late game, so I'm going to give it a B. Up next we have Mr. Bones. Mr. Bones requires you to only reach 25% of the required score to beat that blind to be able to pass. Mr. Bones will destroy after that, and then you'll be back to having to reach the full thing. Mr. Bones can be useful on boss blinds, but I think most of the times if you're not scoring and you need Mr. Bones to be able to get through, it's probably not your run. I think Luchador is better than Mr. Bones. I think Mr. Bones is fine. Like, it's okay. It can save a run, but generally won't. So I'm going to put Mr. Bones in the B tier as well. Next up, we have the Mystic Summit. The Mystic Summit, I think, is a very great early game Joker. Gives you +15 molt whenever you don't have any discards left. Again, like I said, I think this Joker is fantastic for early game. It allows you to get through at least the first or maybe even second ante, maybe just with that. So I think that it's an incredibly good Joker for the early game. Fortunately, you're not taking this one in the late game, so this one's going to be a B. Next up, we have the Obelisk. The Obelisk will increase by 0.2x molt every time you play the hand that is not your most played hand, and it will reset if you play your most played hand. I think this Joker is great. I love this Joker. People usually don't like this Joker, but I think if you give it at the right time, around ante 3, maybe 4, you can build it up pretty quick, and it really kickstart your run. So I think that, Obelisk is great, can play in a lot of great situations, can scale very quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and give Obelisk an A. Next up, we have Odd Todd. Odd Todd gives +31 chips whenever an odd scored number is played. So it's going to be the ace, 3, 5, 7, and 9. Any of those will give +31 chips whenever they are scored. Again, like Even Steven, I think it's okay for the early game. I don't think there's a lot of potential going into late game, especially not with Odd Todd. I think it's fine to get you through the first couple antes, but definitely not something that you would want to take into, you know, ante 6 or 7. So I'm going to give Todd a C. For the next Joker, we have the Onyx Agate, where you get +7 Molt for each club card played. This is obviously going to be better than Gluttonous Joker, which is only +3, but I don't think it's quite as good as the Bloodstone, which is another one of those uncommon suit Jokers. I think it's very good, but I don't think it's really something you'd probably take in a late game, so I'm going to give Onyx Agate a B. The next Joker we have is the Oops All Sixes. The Oops All Sixes doubles all listed probabilities in the game. For example, lucky cards, instead of 1 in 5 chance to get the Molt, you have a 2 in 5 chance to get the Molt. This is one of my favorite Jokers as an avid lucky card user. I think it pairs well with the Lucky Cat, it pairs well with the Bloodstone. There's many things it pairs well with, especially like the Hallucination, gets you tarot cards every time. I think it's probably one of my favorite Jokers. I think I love the concept, so I think it's good in almost every scenario. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and give Oops All Sixes an A. The next Joker we have is Pareidolia. What it does is that it makes every single card treated like a face card. For example, it will work with every single photograph, it will work with every single sock and buskin. All the cards will work like that. Unfortunately, that means every card will be debuffed if you go into the plant, but that's a problem for another time. Overall, I think that Pareidolia is fine. I personally wouldn't carry it a lot because I think that I would prefer to, you know, make my deck down and make it all face cards manually, so I don't even have to carry that and waste a Joker slot on that. Overall, I think it's fine for the early game, allows you to play into that, but I don't think it's a great Joker, so I'm going to give it a C. Our next Joker is the third of the 5 legendary Jokers available in the game, and it is Perkeo. Perkeo copies one of your consumables in your consumable slots and makes it negative. So basically, if you have 1 Hermit, it'll end up being 1 Hermit and 1 negative Hermit at the end of the shop. So this can be incredibly good, especially with an Observatory and a large amount of planet cards, or maybe, I don't know, a Cryptid and a Baron and a Mime. You know, nobody thought of that. But I think it is one of the best Jokers in the game. Obviously, it's a legendary. It has a lot of potential to, you know, help fix your deck, grow your economy. It has a ton of different scenarios. For that reason, I'm going to give it an S tier. Next up, we have the Photograph. The Photograph will do ×2 Molt on the first face card played. Photograph is definitely one of my favorite Jokers. I love the Hanging Chad and Photograph combo, and it's definitely gotten me through a lot of my runs. I think Photograph has a lot of potential to be good in future runs, so I think that, you know, Photograph definitely up there. I'm gonna give it an A rank. Next up, we have the Popcorn. The Popcorn starts with 20 Molt, and then you lose 4 Molt each round you play it. So I think that it's good for the early game. Definitely would not take it in the late game. It wouldn't even last in the late game. It only lasts 5 rounds total. But I think that, you know, it definitely has some good applications. You can definitely use it in the early game to get through those early antes, but I don't think that it really has a lot of late game potential. But because of the early game help, I'm going to go ahead and give it a B. Next up, we have the Raised Fist. The Raised Fist will take your lowest card left held in hand, multiply that by 2, and add it to the Molt. I think that Raised Fist is definitely a good early game Joker. Absolutely would not take it in the late game. I don't see any good use for it in the late game. But the problem with it is early game is that you can't really control what kind of cards are in your hand. I mean, you can, but you can't control what cards you draw. So it's hard to use it and play a good hand at the same time. Overall, I think it's okay. I don't think it's a great Joker, so I'm going to give it a C. Next up, we have Ramen. Ramen gives you ×2 Molt, but every card you discard makes it lose 0.01 Molt. So if you discard 100 cards total, the Ramen's going to get eaten. I think that, you know, it's a great concept. I love it. I think that I love discarding cards as well, so I usually don't like the Ramen. I think that it's better for me to just find my hand using my discards and worry about, you know, discarding safely to keep my Ramen alive. I'd rather just draw my hand. I think it's good. I think it's, you know, an X-Molt Joker. They're always pretty good. So for the Ramen, I'm going to give it a B. Next up, we have the Red card. The Red card gives +3 Molt anytime a booster pack is skipped. That means you have to open the pack and then hit skip, basically not using anything, just upgrading your red card. I think that red card is good. I think it's actually probably one of the best flat Molt Jokers in the game, if not the best. I think that once you get your economy going, after maybe the second ante, you can just open up those packs and skip them, and that is all your flat Molt for the entire run. It should get you all the way through, no problems. I think if you're on a struggling economy, it doesn't work as well. So I definitely would not pick this Joker up if I was struggling and really needed my money. but I think that overall it's probably one of the best flat mult jokers in the game, and that's why it's going to get an A. Next up, we have reserved parking. Reserved parking will give you a 1 in 2 chance to get $1 for every face card left held in hand. Reserved parking, it's like a much worse business card. You're not really holding that many face cards in hand, probably. You're probably trying to play those. So I think that, the application isn't that great. I don't love it. And it's definitely only $1, and you only have a 1 in 2 chance. I'm not a big fan of that, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a C. Next up, we have Ride the Bus. Ride the Bus will give you +1 mult for each hand played without a face card. If you play a hand with a scored face card, it will get rid of that mult, set it back to 0. I think this works very well, especially in the abandoned deck. If you can get that first ante, should be able to take you all the way. It's very useful, I think, but it does kind of limit what you can play, so it is kind of tough to take on other decks, but I think it's good. Definitely one of the better jokers in the game. Well, I wouldn't say that, but it's an okay joker. I'm going to go ahead and give it a B. For our next joker, we have Riff Raff, which at the selection of each blind, if given room, will create 2 common jokers. I think this is probably one of the best jokers in the game, especially early game. If you find it, not only will it provide you point scoring, probably, but it will also provide you money, because you can sell those jokers for the money back, and it is just an incredibly easy way to get your economy up and find good common jokers that can get you through the first 2 antes. Obviously, commons aren't that great. I wouldn't really take it into late game, but I think it's definitely one of probably the best early game joker you can find. And for that reason, I'm going to put it into A. Our next joker is the Showman. The Showman allows you to find multiple copies of the same joker. So if you already have one in your joker slot, you can find it in the shop, or in tarot packs or planet packs, you can find multiple of the same tarot cards or multiple of the same planets. I think that this is good, especially in the late game. Early game, you're probably not going to take this joker, but I think it allows you to really, find those jokers that you need, even if it's multiple of them, and really hunt and go take your run to the next level. So I'm going to give this one a B, just because it's not that useful in the early game, but very useful in the late game. I'm going to give Showman a B. Next up, we have the Rocket. The Rocket starts at $1 at the end of each round, but every time you beat a boss blind, you gain $2 to that. So first ante, if you get it, you will get $1. Second ante will be 3. Third ante will be 5. It scales very quickly and can get very, very good towards like the later antes and really produce you a lot of money at the end of the round. The only problem with this is that you kind of have to find it early, but I still think it's probably one of the best end of round economy jokers in the game. I don't know how many there are. I don't think there's a lot of them, but I think that it's definitely probably the best economy jokers that we can get. So for that reason, I'm going to put it in the A rank. Next up, we have the Rough Gem. The Rough Gem, if scored a diamond card, will give you $1. I think that, it's an okay economy joker. A lot of the times, playing diamonds, there's not that much to go with it, because, you get money, but you don't get any point scoring. So there's a trade-off there. I think it's an okay economy joker, but overall, I definitely would not rely on this for the bulk of my economy. So I'm going to go ahead and give this one a B. Next up, we have the Runner. The Runner, if you play a straight, will give you plus 15 chips. I think if you find this early and you start playing some straights, you can get your chips way up, and then allows you to focus on your flat mult and your X mult for the rest of the run. I think this joker is fantastic if you can find it early. I think that, you're really trying to get better chips so you can focus on your mult. And I think that Runner is probably one of the best ways to do it. So I think I'm going to give Runner an A. Our next joker is Seance. Seance, if you play a straight flush, will give you a spectral card. I hate this joker. I don't know if I've ever even used this joker. I think that, playing a straight flush is hard enough, but also finding Seance and playing a straight flush at the same time is crazy. So I think that, Seance in most situations is absolutely useless. You're not going to be trying to play a straight flush in most scenarios. So I'm going to go ahead and give this one a D tier. Next up, we have the Satellite, which will give you $1 for every different type of planet card you've used at the end of the round. So if you've used Pluto, Mercury, and Venus, it'll give you $3 at the end of the round. If you've used all 12 planets, obviously it'll give you $12 at the end of the round. I think that Satellite can be good. Not great in the early game because you don't get that immediate money, but I think towards the late game, once you've used a lot of the planet cards, it can be good. But unfortunately, I don't think it's as good as the Rocket, so I'm going to go ahead and give this one a B. Next up, we have Scary Face, which gives plus 30 chips for each face card that is scored. Again, I think Scary Face is fine. I think that early, it's good. Late game, it's not that great. You're not really looking for the chips. I think that, again, I'm not a huge fan of Scary Face. There are definitely better Jokers out there. So I'm going to go ahead and give Scary Face a B. Our next Joker is going to be the Scholar. The Scholar, if you play an Ace, will give you plus 20 chips and plus 4 molt on top of the plus 11 chips that you already get from playing the Ace. I think that the Scholar can be good, but it is really hard to get your deck down to Aces, and the Aces don't really trigger that well, or don't have any re-trigger synergy, so I think that it's actually probably one of the worst Jokers in the game. I don't love it, I never will. It's not something I'd pick up and be like, oh, I'm going to try and play towards Aces, because it's hard to do that. So because of that, it's going to go in the C tier. Next up, we have Seeing Double. Seeing Double will give you times 2 molt if you play a club and any other suit type in your scored hand. I think that it's good, but I think most of the time, whenever you're fixing your deck, you're not really looking to play clubs and this, or hearts and this. You're trying to make everything one suit. I think it has good applications, but I don't think it's that crazy. So I think I'm going to put it in B, but it's kind of floating on the line of C, but I'll definitely put it in B. Next up, we have the Seltzer. The Seltzer will retrigger all cards in a played hand to 10 times before it runs out. I think that the Seltzer is great for if you're in a tight situation, you need a quick solution, definitely take the Seltzer. Or to increase your economy with like the business card, if you're playing face cards, again, take the Seltzer. But I think that, overall, we're not really looking at taking the Seltzer late game because it's not reliable. You only get it for 10 hands, not even 10 rounds, but 10 hands. So I think that it's good. It could be better. I'm going to go ahead and give the Seltzer a B. Next up, we have Shoot the Moon. Shoot the Moon gives you plus 13 molt on a queen that is held in your hand. I think early game, especially, this can be very good. Queens, you have 4 of them. They're not that hard to find. You just got to make sure you keep them in your hand. And I think that early game 13 molt is quite a lot. And even late game, sometimes I'll take this into my late game runs, make my queens maybe steal, and it really allows them to help run a lot. So I think that overall it's an okay Joker. Can be good, cannot be that great. So I'm going to give Shoot the Moon a B. Next up, we have Shortcut. Shortcut allows you to have 1 wide gaps in your straights. For example, 9, 7, 5, 3, ace can be a straight, which is crazy, but I think that most of the time, if you're playing straights, you're probably going to be able to draw those straights. You're really looking for those straights. I think it can be useful in some scenarios. I personally would not pick it up. I think that if I'm playing straights, I would rather have other Jokers rather than Shortcut. It can be good in some scenarios. I don't love it, so I'm going to give it a C. Our next Joker is going to be Sixth Sense. If you play a 6 as the first hand and it is only 1/6, it will get destroyed and you will get a spectral card for it. I love the Sixth Sense. I think that it's a great Joker and a great way to get spectral cards, which can really help run. But unfortunately, most of the time you don't have that many 6s in your deck, so you can only use it a few times. I personally like to try and make more 6s if I can, with strengths on 5s and stuff like that, to get more use out of it. I think it's a great Joker. I think that, it's really allows you to get your run going very quickly. But again, you're really limited on the amount of 6s that you can play, so I'm going to give Sixth Sense a B. Next up, we have the Sly Joker. The Sly Joker will give 50 chips if your played hand contains a pair. I think that, again, this is okay for early game. Not great. 50 chips isn't a whole lot, especially whenever you're playing a pair, which has a base molt of 2. Maybe with a full house, it's good. But I don't think that, it's really worth taking. Definitely not worth taking in the late game. For that reason, I'm going to give it a D. Next up, we have the Smear Joker. The Smear Joker allows spades and clubs to be treated as the same suit, and hearts and diamonds to be treated as the same suit. So early game, it's good for allowing you to play flushes or maybe even straight flushes, but later in the game, once you get your deck fixed to what you want, to all hearts or all diamonds or whatever, you don't really need it anymore. So it's okay in the early game. It's not great. I think it's fine. I definitely would take it early in my run if it was offered to me, but I'm not going to bring it late into my game, and that's why I'm going to give it a C. Next up, we have the Smiley Face. The Smiley Face gives plus 5 molt whenever a face card is scored. I think that, especially early, this is incredibly good. Whenever you match it up with the photograph, you get an extra plus 5 molt multiplied on there. So I think that, with the Sock and Buskin, with, Seltzer, other face card synergy, it works very well. So I think that the plus 5 molt can be very helpful. I don't think it really helps take off the run, but I think that it's good enough to get an A rank. So I'm going to give Smiley Face an A. Following up Smiley Face, we have Sock and Buskin, which re-triggers all played face cards. Obviously, has great synergy with the Smiley Face, with the photograph, with a bunch of other face card Jokers, like the business card. I think that this is probably one of the best jokers in the game, especially for specific setups. You're usually, I want to say, almost playing towards face cards because you know this possibility of getting the sock and buskin is so powerful that, you know, you really want to play for face cards for this reason. I don't think it's good enough on its own to deserve the S tier rank, so I'm going to give sock and buskin an A. Next up, we have the Space Joker. The Space Joker has a 1 in 4 chance of leveling up the played hand anytime you play a hand. I think that Space Joker can be very good, can be completely useless if it never triggers, but I think it can be very good, and I love Space Joker. I think it's a great idea, great concept, and that leveling it up is, you know, leveling up your hands with it. It's not reliable, but it can be useful, especially if you just have an open Joker slot. Might as well take it, try and level up some of those hands, and it really helps out in the long run. But overall, since it's a 1 in 4 chance, odds aren't great, I'm going to give Space Joker a B. Next up, we have the Spare Trousers. The Spare Trousers is a flat molt joker that gives +2 molt to itself whenever the played hand contains a 2 pair. So a 2 pair or a full house will both increase the molt on the Spare Trousers by 2. I think it's a great flat molt joker early, get some 2 pairs going, and it really increases quite a bit. I think the scaling of it kind of gets lost in the late game, but I think that is still good. I think it's, you know, fine. I definitely wouldn't put it in A, so I'm going to put it in B. Next up, we have the Splash. This is my least favorite joker in the game, by far. I don't really see any use for it, like, ever. I think that, you know, if you want to play all 5 cards, play a flush, or play a straight, play a 4 of a kind, play 5 of a kind, something like that, to where you can play all your cards. Especially late game, you definitely would not need that. So I think that Splash is probably one of the worst jokers in the game. It's a fine concept, you know, early game, maybe it helps get you a couple more points. It's not going to do that much for you though, so for that reason, it's going in the D tier. Next up, we have the Square Joker. The Square Joker will Next up, we have the Square Joker. The Square Joker will get +4 chips anytime you play a hand with only 4 cards. I think that this can be great, especially on Plasma deck. Really allows you to get your run going and kind of kickstart your run. But I think on most other decks, you're probably limiting yourself to playing 4 cards. It's a little tough, but I do think it's kind of useful sometimes. Can be good, can be bad. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the B tier. Next up, we have the Steel Joker. The Steel Joker will increase by 0.2x molt anytime a steel card is added to your deck. So if you have 5 steel cards in your deck, it's time 2 molt. If you have 20, it's times 5 molt. It does increase very well. However, steel cards are kind of hard to get, so I think that the scaling for it's not that great, but it is still an X molt joker, so I'm going to give it a B rank. Next up, we have the Stone Joker. The Stone Joker will give +25 chips for every stone card in your deck. Personally, I have a bone to pick with Stone Joker because it was the last joker I got before Completionist++, and I really could not find it. I was struggling to find it. But I really don't also think that it's that useful. I think that, you know, it can be useful in some scenarios, but I don't think that it's that useful. I think that you'd have to have a really large amount of stone cards in your deck to even be able to kind of make it remotely close to useful. But overall, again, I'm not a big fan of Stone Joker. I'm going to put it in the C rank. Next up, we have the Stuntman. The Stuntman gives you +250 chips with -2 hand size. The Stuntman can be very good on Plasma deck, but any other deck, you know, 250 chips is a lot. I'm not going to argue that. If you have another flat molt joker, it's pretty good. Can get you through the first few antes. But overall, late game, you definitely do not want to carry Stuntman. That is not a good joker to carry. So I think that, you know, overall, it's not that great. I think that at the end of the day, if I had to take it early game, that's fine. I will take it early game. I don't have a problem with that, but I'm definitely not bringing it into late game. And I think there are chip jokers that you can scale way above the 250 chips to make it so much better than Stuntman. So I'm going to give Stuntman a B. Next up, we have the Supernova. The Supernova will give you the amount of molt for the amount of times that you've played one hand in the run. So if you're playing a flush and you've already played the flush 5 times, it'll give you 5 molt. I think that, you know, it's not that great. It does not scale that quickly, especially if you're playing hands that, you know, you don't play a lot. Like, I understand if you play high card a lot, it'll get up there, but I think that that's probably the only decent instance I could see myself using is the Supernova is with high card. All the other ones don't scale that quickly, but for that reason, I'm going to give it a C. Next up, we have Superposition. If a played straight contains an ace, it will go ahead and... Next up, we have Superposition. If a played straight contains an ace, it will create a tarot card. Obviously, you know, that is kind of limiting. It is hard sometimes to play a straight with an ace. it's not that reliant for a good tarot card generation. I think that, it can be good in some cases, but most of the cases it's not very good at all. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a D. Next up, we have the Swashbuckler. The Swashbuckler will give molt for the rest of the sell value of your jokers in total. I think that overall, it pairs well with the gift card, it pairs well with the egg, but I don't think that it's a great flat molt joker overall. I think it's pretty okay to have in the early game, definitely wouldn't carry in the late game, so I'm going to go ahead and give this one a B. Our next joker we have is the Duo. The Duo will give you ×2 molt if your played hand contains a pair. I think that the Duo is great. I think that it's probably one of the better jokers. It's very easy to obtain with just a pair, but I don't think that the ×2 really does that much for you, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a B. Our next joker is going to be the Trio. The Trio, if played hand, contains a 3 of a kind, will give 3 ×3 molt. I think it's better than the Duo. I think, we really get to use that. ×3 is a lot more than ×2. It doesn't feel like that, but it is. So I think that for that reason, I'm going to give it an A tier. Next up, we have the Family. So if your played hand contains a 4 of a kind, it will give you ×4 molt. Again, this is better later in the game whenever you can reliably draw a 4 of a kind of the cards that you like, but I still think it's very good, and it's probably just as good as a 3 of a kind, just because it's harder to draw a 4 of a kind. It's not going to go into the S tier. I don't think it's an S tier ranked card, but I think it's perfect in the A tier, so we're going to put it in the A tier. Next up, we have the Idol. The Idol gives you ×2 molt for each scored card of a specific card it chooses from your deck. Now, early game, this is not very good. You only have one of each card, and it's only going to pick one of them. And the odds you even draw that aren't that great. But late in the game, if you can get your entire deck down to one card, it is incredibly good. So I think that the Idol, because it's not great early game, but because it is so incredibly good late game, we're going to give it an A. Our next joker is the Order. The Order, if you play a straight, gives you ×3 molt. I think that, playing straights isn't that reliable, doesn't have that many great jokers already, but I think that, with this, it really makes it viable. The only issue is it's pretty hard to find. It's a rare joker, so for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and give it a B tier. The next joker that we have is the Tribe. The Tribe will give ×2 molt if your played hand contains a flush. I think that this is good. Again, I don't think it's great because it's only ×2 and not a ×3 or ×4. Flushes are easier to get, so it makes sense, but I don't think that this one is as good as the Trio or the Family, so I'm going to put it with the Order and the Duo, and it's just going to go in the B tier. Our next joker is going to be the Throwback. Throwback, if you skip a blind, will add 0.25x molt to it. I don't love this joker because not seeing shops is very important in this game, and if you're skipping blinds to increase your throwback level, it's not going to work that well. So I think for that reason, I'm going to give it a D, just because I don't think I would ever pick this up in a normal game, and I don't think you guys should either. Next up, we have the To-Do List. The To-Do List will give you $4 if you play a specific hand that changes every round. I think that it can be extremely good early game, especially if it pulls a high card. Very easy to draw, very easy to get your money up very quickly, and I think that it's great for that reason. However, in the late game, it's not reliable. You're not going to be trying to play straights if your goal is to play flush fives. Again, you're not going to be doing that. So I think that that's good early game, not great late game. For that reason, I'm going to give it a C. Our next joker is To the Moon. To the Moon will take how much interest you get and double it. I think that To the Moon is great, especially with Seed Money or Money Tree, but I'm not sure how long I'd carry it for. I think there's a lot of better options in terms of economy jokers, but I do think it's good early game, especially to get your economy going. So for that reason, I'm going to put it in the B tier. The next joker on the list is the Trading Card. The Trading Card, if your first discard contains only one card, will destroy that card and give you $3 for it. I think this is probably one of the best jokers in the game. It really helps A, build your economy, and B, get your deck set up. It is only one card at a time, so it's not that great, but I think that is still probably one of the best jokers in the game. Really helps you set up your run for endgame, and really helps build your deck exactly how you want it, and also give you money for it. So for that reason, I'm going to put Trading Card in an S tier. Our next joker is going to be Triboulet. Triboulet is the fourth of our 5 legendary jokers, and what Triboulet does is it gives you ×2 molt anytime a king or queen is scored. It is incredibly good. Probably the best joker in the game in my opinion. Obviously it's a legendary, so it's very hard to get, but it has incredible synergy with the Sock and Buskin, and I think that, maybe even with a Seltzer, something like that, early game, you can take this to the moon without even having to worry about anything other than the plant. So for that reason, Triboulet gets an S tier. Our next joker on this list is going to be Troubadour. Troubadour gives you +2 hand size, but it does take away one of your hands. I think the Troubadour is fine. I wouldn't say I love it. I think even though it makes your hand easier to draw, it can be good in some scenarios. It does take away one hand completely, so it is kind of a even trade-off, and for that reason, I'm going to give it a B. Our next joker is going to be the Turtle Bean. For the Turtle Bean, it starts with +5 hand size, and every round it will go down by 1. So your first hand you'll have +5 hand size, and then +4, and then +3. Overall, I think the Turtle Bean is great. I'm okay, like I'm not loving it, I'm not hating it, it's fine, but I don't think it has a lot of use. I think that, especially because the hand size is limited for a short amount of time, I think that it's hard to really make good use out of it. But it does make your hand easier to draw, so for that reason, I'm going to give it a C. Next up, we have the Vagabond. The Vagabond will give you a tarot card if you have $4 or less whenever you play a hand. Overall, I'm not a big fan of this joker. It does allow you to produce a lot of tarot cards, but it's at the expense of keeping your economy low and hindered, and I do not like that at all. I think that the economy is the most important part of the game. Even if it stops your Vagabond from working, I think that it's just better to have a stronger economy. For that reason, I'm giving Vagabond a C. Next up, we have the Vampire. For the Vampire, if an enhanced card is played and scored, the Vampire will take away the enhancement, but gain 0.1x molt to it. Overall, I'm not a big fan of the Vampire. I don't think it's that useful. I think that it's better to have card enhancements than the times molt. Again, it's only times 0.1 every time, so it does cost A, a lot of tarot cards to generate that, but B, it takes away that. So you don't really want the Vampire, in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of it. I know it was strong whenever the game first came out, whenever it was 0.2 instead of 0.1, but I think now it's not as good, so I'm going to go ahead and put it in the C tier. Next up is going to be the Walkie Talkie. For each played 10 or 4, it gains 10 plus 10 plus 10. Our next joker is going to be the Walkie Talkie. For each scored 10 or 4, it will gain 10 chips and 4 molt. I think that the Walkie Talkie is fine for early game. I definitely wouldn't take this one into late game, but it does have a little bit of synergy with the hack and the 4s that can make it okay at best. But unfortunately, again, you're not taking this into late game, so I'm going to go ahead and give Walkie Talkie a B. Our next joker is going to be the Wii Joker. The Wii Joker, for each played 2, adds 8 chips to the Wii Joker. I think the Wii Joker is great. I think it is easily scalable, especially with a hack or a hanging Chad. For that reason, I think it's probably one of the best chip jokers in the game. I'm going to give it an A tier. Our next joker is going to be the Wily Joker. The Wily Joker, if played hand, contains a 3 of a kind, will give you plus 100 chips. Again, it's just kind of like the other ones at the beginning. We're not big fans of those. The early chip jokers are fine, but again, a 3 of a hand is not that easy to find at the beginning of the game. So I don't think it has that much impact on your early game. For that reason, it's going to get a D. Our next joker is going to be the Wrathful Joker. Just like the Lusty Joker, Greedy Joker, and Gluttonous Joker, it gives plus 3 molt to spade cards played. Again, I'm not a huge fan of these. They're fine, they're great for the early game, but I'm gonna have to put it in the C tier. Our next joker is Yorick, who is the last of the 5 legendary jokers, and for every 23 cards discarded, Yorick gains a times molt. So for example, after every 23 cards discarded, you'll go from 1x to 2x, 2x to 3x, 3x to 4x, so on and so on. It pairs very well with the Merry Andy, pairs very well with the red deck. I think it's probably one of the better jokers in the game. It does scale linearly, which is fine, but I do think Yorick's probably one of the best jokers in the game, and it is going to go in S tier. Finally, our last and 150th joker is the Zany Joker. The Zany Joker gives you plus 12 molt if your played hand contains a 3 of a kind. Again, it's going to go with the rest of them. I don't think it's that great, but I think that overall, it can be fine in the early game, but I definitely would not take it in the late game, so it's going to go in the D tier. Alright everybody, so this over here is my joker ranking. I think that I did a pretty good job. Let me know if you guys disagree, or let me know where your favorite joker went, where I ranked them in the comments, and just kind of, if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. It really would help me out a ton, and I would really appreciate it, and especially if you guys enjoyed. So I appreciate you guys for watching the video, and I'll see you guys next time.